The splash of crystal blue water, the sound of laughter. Water parks seem like the safest place to let go of fear. But behind the noise and color, some rides hid moments of chaos and fatalities. In this video, we're exposing 6 horrifying water park disasters, each ending in tragedy. It was June 14th, 2015. At a popular water park outside Phoenix, Arizona, music thumped over the loudspeakers as families lined up for the park's tallest slide, a twisting yellow chute that ended in a deep catch pool. The sound of rubber scraping plastic echoed between shrieks of laughter. Maya Reynolds was 19, a college freshman back home for the summer and known among her friends for her humor and boldness. She often posted funny videos from water parks and fairs, using her size as part of her comedy. At over 250 pounds, she was heavier than most riders, but carried it with confidence, often joking that she gave rides extra speed. Water slides like the one she rode that day rely entirely on balanced forces between rider weight, tube elasticity, and water flow. The tubes, inflated to hold shape under distributed pressure, degrade with time and sunlight exposure. The park's Hurricane Rush slide had no posted weight cap, but internal manuals, used as evidence later, specified a 200-pound limit for the single-person tubes. That information stayed off public signs to avoid complaints against the park for being fatphobic. Maya, without knowing it, exceeded that threshold by 50 pounds. It was mid-afternoon when Maya and her 3 friends decided to try the slide before leaving. The line was long, the air shimmering with heat. They joked about getting the fastest run. When it was her turn, the operator did a brief belt check but didn't inspect the tube. It was faded from use, its seams dull gray instead of black. When Maya sat, the vinyl compressed sharply under her. She laughed, bouncing lightly in the ring. The operator hesitated, glanced at the next riders waiting, then waved her through. Investigators later reviewed CCTV and inspection footage showing the descent, the tube skidding, then wobbling as it built speed. By the second curve, the pressure on the weakened seam caused a deep flexing motion. The ride's inner surface amplified her velocity instead of cushioning it. The tube's outer wall folded under her right side, deflating in a violent jerk. A faint tearing sound cut through the rush of water. The rubber collapsed completely, leaving her exposed against the slick fiberglass. Without buoyancy, Maya's body skidded directly on the slide's surface. CCTV captured her shoulder, striking the wall at over 25 miles per hour. The contact flipped her sideways. Her body tumbled uncontrolled through the chute, dragging remnants of the shredded tube. Witnesses near the exit heard a sharp, hollow crack as she hit the hard fiberglass runout before the pool. Water splashed high. Someone shouted that the tube had burst. 2 lifeguards jumped in immediately and pulled her limp body to the deck, while instructing others to call 911. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but she never regained consciousness. The medical report listed massive blunt force trauma and internal bleeding as the cause of death. The water park's investigation found the tube had an old seam defect, worsened by sun wear, but concluded that the decisive trigger was excessive load beyond safe operational limits. It was deemed an avoidable accident caused by equipment misuse and operator negligence. An Arizona state inspector later cited the park for poor equipment maintenance and operator oversight. Within a month, the park announced the slide was closed for maintenance and quietly removed it before the next season. No public statement mentioned weight or safety limits to avoid drama. A private memorial was held near her college dorm that summer. It was March 2nd, 2017, in Pune, India. The municipal water park was packed, the air heavy with chlorine and noise. The looping slide, painted bright green and advertised as the 360 Rush, had become a viral draw on local social media. Staff worked mechanically, hurrying guests through. No one noticed the boy at the top of the stairs grinning into a friend's phone camera, preparing to do something monumentally stupid. Arjun Mehta was 16, a junior at a private school, known more for his antics than his grades. His friends called him fearless, but his teachers called him impulsive. He filmed dares, stunts, and near misses on his cheap smartphone and posted them on his social media. A short clip of him sliding down a handrail at school had gotten over a few hundred views. That was all the validation he needed. His relationship with danger came from imitation, not understanding. He had seen Western waterpark videos where riders stood up mid-slide and thought he could recreate it. The looping slide in Pune wasn't designed for that. It used controlled water pressure and timed acceleration to carry riders through a near-vertical loop section where gravity briefly reversed. Its fiberglass structure was thin at certain points, reinforced only by external steel ribs. At the midpoint, where forces peaked, a small maintenance hatch was recessed behind a narrow frame lip inside the curve. It was safe under normal operation, but unforgiving to anyone attempting to stand. That morning, a lifeguard told Arjun's group that anyone caught standing inside would be banned. They laughed, and his friend Vivek dared him to do it anyway. The staff didn't stop him as he climbed the stairs alone, pretending to tie his shorts. The park's loudspeakers drowned out his friend's half-hearted warnings. A gust of hot wind hit the slide tower, and from the observation bridge, families watched his turn approach. He waited at the top platform as the signal light turned green. The operator gestured him forward, assuming he was ready. Arjun leaned back, crossed his arms, and launched himself into the enclosed tube. The first curve was smooth. He screamed with adrenaline, camera still mounted to his wristband. As the slide transitioned into the steep loop, witnesses saw his shadow shift unnaturally through the translucent shell. Engineers later estimated from impact marks and water flow data a sudden change in direction where he had tried to push up against the rushing water. Halfway through the loop, he attempted to plant one foot against the wall. The force of the water, moving at over 20 miles per hour, threw him upward into the curve. His shoulder struck the fiberglass first, followed by his back. The impact disoriented him, and his body twisted sideways. Momentum carried him into the maintenance hatch, striking the internal frame edge with full force. Momentum carried him into the maintenance hatch, striking the internal frame edge with full force. The marks later showed a sudden, high-energy collision, followed by complete loss of motion. People on the bridge heard a muted thud echo from inside the slide, then silence. Seconds later, the water stream emerging from the exit turned red. The operator signaled for the pumps to be shut off. Maintenance workers unbolted the access hatch and found Arjun wedged against the curve, motionless, water still rushing around him. He was pulled out with no pulse. Paramedics called by the staff arrived within minutes, but blunt force trauma to his torso and spinal column had been fatal. Eyewitness accounts and municipal investigators later confirmed that he had tried to stand. The loop's structural design was within safety standards. The failure was entirely behavioral. The municipality suspended all looping slides pending inspection and ordered new safety signage. A quiet report noted that no mechanical fault contributed to the accident. His school held a short assembly, but his parents declined interviews. The park reopened a month later. It was August 20th, 2016, in Mesa, Arizona. Desert Wave Water Park sat dark and silent, its ride silhouetted under the dim maintenance lights. The place was closed for the season, drained and waiting for refurbishment. For 3 neighborhood kids who had spent their summer climbing rooftops and exploring abandoned lots, it looked like an open dare. Tyler Reed was 17, a high school senior known among friends for being restless, daring, and always first to try something stupid just to see if it could be done. His friends, Evan and Marcus, said he made everything into a challenge. He wasn't looking for attention, he just hated the feeling of backing down. He had talked about climbing the slide tower before, not to jump, but just to look out over the city lights. The structure rose 32 feet above the drained pool deck, its stairs wrapped in rusting metal rails. The deep end below was bone dry, the concrete cracked from heat and sun. They all knew the park was closed, and the no trespassing signs were obvious, but it wasn't their first time inside. They slipped through a gap in the fence at 12:18 a.m., moving quietly, whispering in the dark. The tower steps were slick with desert dust. From the 32 feet top, the view stretched for miles. They lingered there for a while. Then Tyler leaned over the railing and looked down into the drained pool. Marcus later told investigators that the moment went still, like something had shifted in him. At first, the idea sounded like another one of his impossible dares, jumping from the tower into the empty basin. Evan said he laughed it off until he realized Tyler wasn't joking. He told him it was a straight drop and that there was nothing soft to break it. Tyler shrugged, insisting the sloped curve at the deep end would cushion the fall slightly, that it wasn't a pure flat hit. For several minutes, he paced along the platform, gripping the railing, peering down. His friends said he hesitated just long enough for them to think he'd changed his mind. Then he suddenly ran forward, planted both feet on the edge, and jumped. He cleared the railing easily but was off balance mid-air. His legs bent awkwardly as he dropped. The impact made a short, echoing thud that carried across the empty park. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then Marcus started down the ladder, missing steps, scraping his hands on the metal, while Evan shouted his name from above. When they reached the basin, Tyler was motionless, lying face down near the center lane. His arms were twisted beneath him, one leg bent awkwardly outward. Blood was spreading beneath his head, dark against the faded blue paint. Evan ran outside to find help. Paramedics arrived within 10 minutes, guided by police responding to a call from a nearby resident who'd heard Evan. The incident report noted that Tyler had jumped from a height of approximately 32 feet, landing on the downward slope of the deep end. The fall produced massive skull and chest trauma, killing him instantly. The police determined there was no foul play. Both surviving teens were treated for shock and minor injuries from climbing the structure. Their statements aligned closely with the physical evidence. A spontaneous dare, no premeditation, no filming. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as catastrophic blunt head trauma. Manner of death accidental. Word spread through their high school before the next morning, rumors twisting what had really happened. Some called it suicide. Others said it was a stunt gone wrong. The truth, Evans said later, was simpler and worse. It was just a bad idea taken one step too far. It was June 5th, 2016, at a coastal resort in Phuket, Thailand. Families crowded the shallow end of the resort's wave pool as the artificial surf pulsed every few minutes. But beneath the waves, the pool's circulation system was old, patched together through years of minor fixes. One small defect, barely noticeable, waited to align with just the wrong conditions. Niran Phanthong was 8, visiting with his parents and younger sister from Chiang Mai. He was small for his age, energetic, and unafraid of water despite never having attended formal swim lessons. That day, he wore bright blue trunks with long drawstrings that hung loose past his knees. He had spent the morning jumping between the children's pool and the shallows, always returning when the wave generator restarted. The resort's wave pool was built in the early 2000s, using imported pump systems designed for constant high flow. Maintenance logs later showed one return line. The secondary suction near the shallow end had a cracked flange and a replacement cover not rated for the pump's capacity. Engineers noted that when water levels fluctuated or flow cycled rapidly, suction could increase beyond design limits. It was a known issue among maintenance staff, but not flagged as an immediate hazard. Management had planned a full system overhaul at the end of tourist season. That afternoon, most swimmers had cleared the pool. The wave generator restarted on a high-pressure setting. Niran was standing near the shallow ledge, close to a square drain cover that blended in with the tile floor. He was waist-deep, adjusting his goggles, when the next wave cycle began. According to witness statements, he bent down as if reaching for something in the water, and then jerked suddenly upright. His right leg kicked once, before his upper body was pulled forward and down. The water around him started to churn, forming a pocket of bubbles over the drain. The lifeguard on duty saw him struggling and blew his whistle before diving into the pool. When he reached the spot, Niran's torso was pressed flat against the grate. The guard tried to lift him, but couldn't. His swimsuit had been sucked into the drain opening. A second guard and 2 guests entered the water to help. They pulled together until the suction finally broke with a loud pop, tearing the fabric loose. They lifted Niran onto the deck. He was unresponsive and not breathing. CPR was started immediately, but there was little chest movement. The area around his body showed loose threads and pieces of his drawstring, confirming it had been pulled into the drain's housing. Paramedics arrived within seconds from the resort clinic. They continued resuscitation for over 20 minutes, but he was declared dead at 2:41 p.m. The autopsy confirmed drowning and noted severe bruising across his abdomen, consistent with hydraulic compression. The damaged drain cover was later recovered from the pool bottom, warped and corroded at its seal. Investigators concluded the suction hazard had existed for months, but was aggravated by high wave cycle pressure and lack of a secondary suction release system or compliant dual drain setup. The resort's operator was fined for negligence in maintenance and documentation. The resort quietly compensated the family, covering repatriation and funeral costs. Within 2 weeks, all pool drains were replaced with dual-suction anti-entrapment systems. The incident prompted a local audit of public pool infrastructure across the area, revealing multiple similar risks. It was July 28, 2018, at a coastal water park in Fujian Province, China. Colored lights shimmered across the surface of the lazy river, giving the illusion of calm under the faint buzz of electric pumps. However, old wiring and corroded fixtures lay just inches from exposed water. Wang Mei was 42, an administrative assistant at a shipping company in Fuzhou. She was practical and sociable, known among co-workers for organizing weekend trips that helped her forget the monotony of spreadsheets and phone calls. Her daughter had just left for university, and friends convinced her to come out that evening for one night of summer fun. She wasn't a strong swimmer, but liked floating rides, where she could relax without effort. The lazy river was her favorite. Slow, glowing, predictable. The park had once been a local symbol of prosperity. Built in 2006, it used imported underwater lighting and electric pumps designed for decorative flow effects. Maintenance logs showed that in 2017, a major contractor stopped supplying replacement fixtures due to cost. The park's own staff had begun patching corroded light housings with cheaper parts from a domestic supplier. Engineers later found that insulation had decayed from salt exposure, and grounding systems no longer met electrical code. Yet management continued evening operations, citing no visible safety hazard. That night, Wang and 5 friends entered the water around 7:40 p.m. The current was mild. Music played over loudspeakers, and the group drifted along the outer loop. A family ahead of them filmed on a waterproof action camera. In the footage later reviewed by police, faint flickering can be seen from a light embedded in the river wall. Nearby guests appeared to pause, touching their legs as if startled. One man raised his hand toward the lifeguard station but continued floating. Moments later, Wang jerked upright in her tube. Witnesses described a sudden stiffness in her body, as if she were frozen mid-breath. Her arms twitched, fingers curling involuntarily. A friend nearby shouted for her, assuming she was cramping. When she slipped under, the motion seemed unnatural. She didn't struggle or call out, just folded into the current. Others began feeling sharp tingling in their limbs, realizing too late that something was wrong. The lifeguard on duty leapt into the water and instantly felt a shock run up his arm. He hesitated, then ran along the concrete edge and reached for Wang's shoulder with a rescue pole. The current carried her several meters downstream before 2 guests managed to hook her with an inner tube and drag her toward the side. She was limp, unresponsive, her lips pale. CPR began on the deck, while staff cut power to the water circulation system. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes after being alerted by guests. They continued resuscitation on the pool side before transferring her to a local hospital. Despite electrical stabilization attempts, she was pronounced dead from ventricular fibrillation caused by low-voltage electric current. 5 others were treated for secondary shock injuries. Testing confirmed electrical leakage from a submerged light fixture where the internal insulation had failed and voltage had reached the water via a corroded mounting bolt, and grounding wires were corroded completely through. The inspection report identified multiple maintenance violations, including expired safety certifications and unauthorized repair methods. The corroded fitting had remained active, despite a prior complaint about flickering lights earlier that month. Investigators traced responsibility to a subcontractor who had falsified inspection records to meet renewal deadlines. Within a week, the park closed for emergency repairs. Management issued no public statement, but offered quiet financial settlements to affected families. The case led to the prosecution of 2 maintenance contractors for criminal negligence. Provincial safety authorities later issued an emergency circular requiring all aquatic amusement facilities to retrofit submerged electrical systems with residual current protection devices. It was September 9, 2015, in Quintana Roo, Mexico. The coastal air still smelled of rain after a night of pounding storms. The tourist water park, half flooded and littered with debris, sat in uneasy silence. Carlos Rios, 36, had worked at the park for 9 years. A maintenance line worker, he was known for handling mechanical problems quickly, often improvising when parts were missing or schedules were tight. He had a reputation for being steady, the kind of worker trusted to stay late when others went home. But he also cut corners, priding himself on getting it done even if it meant skipping steps. The park's pumping system was large and temperamental, feeding water through underground pipes that powered slides and kept artificial currents flowing. Each intake pipe was fitted with heavy grates and a manual lockout valve for safety, but the design was aging. When storm surges hit, the system could become unpredictable. Engineers had long complained that the intake pits lacked secondary guards, but upgrades were postponed due to cost. Carlos knew this. He'd been part of maintenance crews during past floods. The storm had sent waves inland, flooding the lagoon that supplied the park's water features. A 6-person inflatable raft, torn from its mooring during the night, had drifted into one of the intake channels. Security footage later showed it wedged against the main pipe feeding the lazy river. With the storm receding, management wanted pumps restarted before tourists arrived at noon. Standard lockout-tagout procedures required full isolation of power before manual clearing, but with power already unstable and time short, workers bypassed several steps. They believed the intake flow had subsided. Carlos led 2 younger co-workers to the pump house. Water still surged irregularly through the intake line, producing deep thuds as trapped air shifted. The men hooked poles around the raft's edge but couldn't dislodge it. Carlos crouched at the rim, studying the gap between the raft and grate. It was only partially covered. A previous repair had left one corner exposed. He decided to cut the remaining tether manually. His co-workers hesitated. One noted the suction felt stronger than expected. Carlos insisted it was safe enough. Footage from a fixed security camera captured the moment the current changed. The raft suddenly lurched forward, the intake roaring alive with renewed suction. The system's automatic level sensor had reactivated the main pump when water levels stabilized, restoring full pressure without warning. Carlos's left arm slipped through the exposed gap before anyone could react. His body was yanked against the steel grate, half submerged, the force pinning him flat. The others screamed and grabbed his belt, but the pull was too strong. The current shifted again, and in seconds, Carlos was drawn completely into the pipe. A flash of air bubbles followed, then stillness. The pump's vibration was audible across the pump house. Workers ran to the control board, slamming the cutoff lever, but the electrical system tripped and delayed the shutdown. The residual suction from the secondary impeller continued for nearly 40 seconds after power isolation, enough to prevent any immediate rescue. By the time flow ceased, it had been over a minute. Divers later recovered Carlos's body from the pump housing, severely injured by the turbine blades. Forensic testing measured extremely high suction pressure at the intake, well above safe limits, sufficient to trap a person instantly. The accident prompted immediate closure of the water park. Investigators documented missing lockout tags, open panels, and no supervisor present during the operation. The storm had overloaded the system, but the fatal factor was procedural and ignored safety sequence. The company covered funeral costs and offered settlements to his family. Regional labor authorities opened a negligence inquiry, citing failure to enforce post-storm lockout procedures. Thanks for watching. If you liked these series, click here for more.